This presentation is about the SQ3R study method, and this is something that you're going to be able to use for any of your classes. Think about this situation. You've got 3 hours to study for your biology test. It takes 1 hour to read the chapter. Should you read it over 3 times? Well, most people would say yes, that's exactly what I do. I have 3 hours, I read it 3 times. Well, that's not the best method for studying. There is another way where you're going to retain a lot more of that information than just simply reading it over and over again. When you're reading, again, do you just try to remember as much as you can, or are you actually searching for the deeper meaning, the main idea, the bias of the author, the emotional quality if it's literature? What are those deeper intentions of what you're reading beyond just going through and reading the words? Keep in mind that reading is not a race. The fastest readers are not necessarily the best readers. In fact, they probably aren't going to remember the information even if they can read the words quickly. What you want to do is slow down, take notes. After each sentence, after each paragraph, you're going to stop and write something down or highlight or underline. And so this actually takes a lot of time. You're going to become a very slow reader. Think about when you actually pay attention to something that you're reading. When was the last time you really retained the information? Well, it was probably when you were actually interested in the subject that you were reading about. How can you do this with your classwork? Well, what I like to say is trick yourself into being interested. Think about your instructor has devoted their entire life to this subject. What is it that they found interesting about this? There has to be something there, right? And you may find that there's actually a lot there. What's the difference between an active reader and a passive reader? So active readers are going to have questions as they're reading through. They're going to connect what they're reading to their background knowledge, to the lecture that they already attended, and in addition to that, you're going to read through. Before you even start reading, you're going to skim through and look at the graphics, look at the questions at the end of the chapter, try to get a good picture of what's coming up in the chapter, and read slowly. Take your notes, highlight, underline, write questions as you go through. You're going to end up developing your own strategy for what works best, whether it's just recopying your notes a couple of times, reorganizing them, teaching somebody else what you learn. You're going to have a strategy for what works best that gets you that A on the test. Passive readers, they don't necessarily have questions as they read through. They just kind of read and try to remember as much as they can. You may not make those connections between what you did in the lecture and what you actually read in the textbook. Passive readers are going to potentially follow the same routine for every class. So again, there may be study strategies that work well for one class that are different for another type of class. So again, you want to develop those strategies that are going to make you an active reader and no longer a passive reader. So what is this SQ3R method? Well, the S is survey. Survey comes first, and then you're going to question what you're reading, read through, and the final two are recite and review before the test. How do you survey? Well, survey, skim, they can kind of be interchangeable here. You're going to skim over the material. If there are pictures, you're going to look at the pictures and the captions. If there's bold print, vocabulary words, you're going to look at those. If it's just all straight through and doesn't have anything like that, maybe you could read the first few paragraphs, the first sentence of each paragraph. If there's a summary, if there are questions at the end of the chapter. Those are the types of things that you're actually going to look at first. So you have to get away from this just reading through from start to finish. It's going to help you to get focused on the subject, get interested, and also any kind of background knowledge that you already have, whether it's from the lecture that you had already or from your own personal life. Think about things that, questions that you come up with based on that background knowledge. You already know some things about the subject, but what don't you know? What do you think you're going to read about? So pay attention to all of the titles, all of the introduction, summary, if there's a preview of the chapter, all the bold print headings of each of the different parts of the chapter, the visuals, and of course the study questions at the end. Why do you do this? You're going to get a big picture of what the entire chapter is about, not just the first part, the first paragraph that you're reading, but where is this going? What is this chapter really about? You're going to decide the importance that way. Maybe they just talk about the thing in the first paragraph very briefly, but the chapter is really about something else. So you're going to get an idea of what you really want to be taking from this chapter by knowing the important points in advance, and that'll help you as you're taking your notes. And again, you're going to connect things that you already know to things that you see as you skim through that maybe you need to find out some more information about before you go and take that test. Additionally, it's going to prepare you to read. So what I mean by that is it helps you to focus. It helps you to stop thinking about all the other things you've been thinking about all day and focus in on this thing that you're about to read. How do you question? SQ. So Q is for question. You're going to, use the old who, what, where, when, why, how, all of those, and actually, say, okay, what is this chapter really about? Who are the important things, or what are the important things that I see as I'm skimming through? Why is this going to be important to my test? Why is the author writing about this? What is their perspective? How are they accomplishing this? How is this thing going to occur? How is this taking place, right? So you can create questions just by using those simple words that are going to help you to focus more on your reading. And as you read through, you can take notes that are going to answer those questions. So in addition to staying focused, it gives a little bit more purpose to your reading. It's going to create interest in the subject because now, your purpose is to answer those questions that you came up with in the beginning. And if you answer them, then you're a successful reader. Here's the first R in the SQ3R. You're going to read actively. So not just read, but you're going to be looking for answers to those questions that you came up with. If you're studying with somebody else, as you're reading each paragraph, just stop. Stop and say, what did you get out of that paragraph? What things did you think were important? Or, even at the end of the chapter, if you don't happen to be sitting next to somebody else as you're reading through. So talk to somebody else about what you're reading. Or even if there's nobody there, you could say it out loud if that helps you. Write in the margins, maybe you can photocopy the chapter and print it out so that you can actually write on it if you can't write in your textbook, or at least have some note paper out next to you that you can write down your questions, you can write down all the important points. If you can highlight. That's another good method. Underline. And this one I probably wouldn't do standing up, but some people may benefit from standing up, especially if you're falling asleep, right? So that goes back to choosing a good place for doing your reading. So, you may stand up and pace back and forth as you read, or you may just, find one of those places that you're not going to be distracted, something that's well lit so that you can stay focused and stay interested. So here are some signals that you can look for to decide whether you're doing this correctly or not. Some positive signals would be that, you feel like, okay, I have background knowledge on this subject. I know most of the vocabulary. When I'm done, I can rephrase what I just read and tell somebody else about it. I've made some connections to other things that we've done so far in the class, other things that I already know about. I can figure out, what the important points are of this text and where the author is going when they start to write about a subject. Why is this important? Why are they writing about it? And the opposite of that is you just have no idea about a lot of the vocabulary. You have no experience with the subject. You don't remember anything from the lecture. If you had to explain it to somebody, you would say the exact language that was used in the text rather than being able to paraphrase it yourself. And you just really don't have anything that stands out as very important. Or maybe the opposite happens and you end up highlighting an entire paragraph. Usually that's not going to happen. You want to pick and choose those things that are the most important. So why are we reading in the first place? You want to remind yourself, that you're not only trying to get the information. Why are you trying to get the information? You're preparing for class. You're preparing for discussion that you're going to have online. You're preparing for a test. So convince yourself that you really actually need to retain this information. Here's the second R, reciting. Once you're done reading, soon after you want to paraphrase, put things in your own words. Maybe you rewrite a summary of the entire chapter. That's a good way to get to the important points. Which things did you write down? Which things did you think were important enough that they might be on the test? You can, reorganize your notes. If you already wrote some notes, write them again. Create some index cards that you can take with you. Record yourself if you're not a read-write type of person. If you're more of an auditory learner, you can record yourself speaking and play that in the car. And finally, this one I like, is teaching it to somebody else. So if I'm excited about what I'm reading, or even if I'm not and I have to remember it, I can pretend that I'm excited. You want to tell somebody else about what you read. And that'll help you remember when you get to the test. That'll help you remember those important points. Why are we doing this step of reciting right after we read? Well, if you go back over everything immediately afterwards, soon afterwards, you're going to retain the information. You don't want to just read something and then go back to your notes a week later because you may have forgotten some of the important points. So if you rewrite the information, if you record yourself saying the information, make a summary, paraphrase, you're going to retain it a lot better. And the other reason to do it is immediately after you can check and see if you understood everything, or if you still have questions that you need to go back and try to find the answers to, or do further research in order to answer the questions. How do you review? Again, you can teach someone else. Especially if there's somebody else that's in your class that actually needs to know the information, that would be great. But also friends, family, this is interesting stuff that you're learning, so go ahead and tell them about it. That's really going to help you remember. You can also, of course, make a recording of yourself, listen to yourself talking, and you can also recopy your notes. In addition to just rereading them again, you can reorganize them, make those 3x5 cards. When do you do this? Well, you have to do it right after you read, or you're going to forget some of that stuff. You have to do it every week, or if the test is coming up in a week, maybe every day, just for a few minutes. Just reread them. It'll really help you remember. You want to overlearn this information. So even if you're saying to yourself, well, I already know this, I've already learned it, the idea is to actually overlearn. You may not have retained as much as you think. And of course, right before the test too, so you can get maybe a little bit more that you didn't know already that you can memorize right before the test. Quiz yourself. Describe what are those steps of SQ3R. See if you can name each step. What is the S? What is the Q? And what are the 3 R's? And think about how and why you would use it. You could pause this video if you need to. And here it is. Survey question. Read, recite, and review. And each of those steps is really, really important to the studying process. Finally, think about just a few other things. Think about the place where you spend your time studying. Are there a lot of distractions? How is the lighting? You want a place that you can come and focus on the material. Again, don't read through it quickly. Slow down, take your notes, think of your questions, and of course rewrite, organize those notes when you're finished. And another way to do that is talk to somebody else. If nobody is there to talk to, record yourself, talk to yourself, summarize what you read, paraphrase it, write it down. You're going to find the method that works best for you.